Picture this. You're a builder. Your blueprints are flawless, your crew is ready, and you can practically taste project success until you hit the ground and boom. The site throws you a surprise. Hidden rocks, shifting soils, maybe even something totally off the survey. Who picks up the pieces when reality doesn't match the paperwork? That's the heart of Clause 4.10, use of site data. Why does this matter so much? Because Clause 4.10 spells out exactly who shoulders the risk when unexpected ground conditions pop up. Don't assume you can just rely on the info the employer hands over. This clause makes it clear. Contractors are expected to dig deeper, pun intended. You need to do your own site research, review every bit of data, ask smart questions, and basically double-check that what you see on paper matches what's underground. Here's your quick tip. Don't be passive. You, the contractor, must actively study site data, raise red flags, and think 2 steps ahead before the excavators roll in. Clause 4.10 is your checklist for who checks what before a single shovel hits the soil. And remember, as FIDIC contracts have evolved, so have the rules on responsibility and the risks you're expected to manage. Ready to unpack what this means for you? Let's dive in.
Let's zoom out and compare Clause 4.10 in the 1999 and 2017 FIDIC editions, because the changes are huge for anyone on site. In 1999, it was called Site Data. The employer had to make all relevant site info available before the base date, while the contractor's job was to interpret that data, inspect the site, and gather what else was needed. The standard for due diligence? It was implied. You were expected to do a reasonable investigation and interpret what you got. Fast forward to the 2017 edition, and the game changes. The title becomes Use of Site Data. Now the employer's direct obligation is gone from this clause and pops up instead in Clause 2.5. The contractor? You're on your own, responsible not just for interpreting whatever data is handed to you, but also for proactively hunting down extra info to the extent practicable, balancing cost and time. The expectation is stronger. You're deemed to have investigated all site risks, period. This means risk allocation shifts. In 1999, there was a kind of balance. The employer gave the data, and the contractor had to interpret and check it. In 2017, that risk is squarely on the contractor. You own the risk, both for what you're given and for anything you didn't uncover. The language? It's more assertive, removing any wiggle room, and really embodies that modern design-build approach. Plus, while both editions tie into other clauses about pricing and unforeseeable conditions, the 2017 version cross-references Clause 2.5 more clearly and puts the burden of inquiry firmly on the contractor's shoulders. Legally, we've moved from a world of balanced risk sharing to one where contractors are expected to lead and own the risk in design-build contracts. Here's your key takeaway. With the 2017 FIDIC Yellow Book, if you're the contractor, you're carrying the lion's share of risk for site conditions. So doing your homework isn't just a good idea, it's your lifeline.
Let's hop in our time machine and watch how FIDIC's approach to site data responsibility has evolved. Back in 1999, the rule was clear. The employer shall have made available to the contractor all relevant data in the employer's possession on subsurface and hydrological conditions at the site, including environmental aspects. Basically, the employer had to hand over every bit of site info they had before the base date, and the contractor got to sift through it all. Subsurface conditions, water, environment, you name it. But even then, here's the catch. While the employer provided the data, the contractor was the one who had to interpret it, question it, and fill in any blanks. So while risk was technically shared, the practical reality was that most of the due diligence and potential pitfalls landed squarely on the contractor's shoulders. Now fast forward to 2017. The clause tightens up. The contractor shall be responsible for interpreting all data provided by the employer or included in the contract. To the extent practicable, taking account of cost and time, the contractor shall be deemed to have obtained all necessary information as to risks, contingencies, and other circumstances which may influence or affect the works. Notice what's missing? The employer's duty to provide site data is gone. Now it's on the contractor not only to make sense of whatever info is handed over, but also to actively seek out any other details they can reasonably uncover. The result? The entire burden of site investigation, understanding, and risk now sits with the contractor, especially on design-build projects. So why the shift? Modern infrastructure contracts want contractors to be the true risk experts. Employers, especially in the public sector, don't want disputes over incomplete data coming back to haunt them. FIDIC's updated approach says, if you're building, you're in the best position to find surprises before they become headaches. So it's your job to investigate, prepare, and handle whatever the site throws at you.
Let's bring this home with a real-life scenario. Imagine a U.S. contractor wins a design-build job for a big Arizona highway interchange. The employer shares geotechnical reports. Sure, they're a year old, but they make the site look simple. Everything's green lights until excavation starts, and suddenly the team runs into unexpected massive rock layers, nothing like what was in the data. Now what? Here's how this plays out. First, the employer discloses those old geotech reports as part of the tender process. The contractor reviews them, but skips further site investigation. No extra borings, no radar scans, just takes the reports at face value. Then, mid-dig, they hit a wall of subsurface rock. Surprise, surprise, and it's a costly one. Under Clause 4.10, if you only relied on the employer's info and didn't go the extra mile to check, question, and double-check, the risk is yours. FIDIC is clear. Contractors are expected to be proactive investigators, not just passive recipients of data. Don't just accept what's handed to you. Scrutinize, document, and always be prepared to back up your decisions. But here's a key twist. What if that rock layer was truly unforeseeable? If even a reasonably diligent contractor, after a genuine good faith investigation, couldn't have discovered it? Then Clause 4.112 on unforeseeable physical conditions might give you some relief, but the bar is high. You'll need crystal clear facts and bulletproof documentation. So here's your quick tip. Always keep thorough records of your site checks, the questions you asked, and every assumption you made. If you ever need to lean on Clause 4.112, your paperwork could make or break your claim. Don't just cover your bases, document them. So, how does FIDIC's approach to site risk compare to other major contract systems? Let's break it down. Under the AIA A201 contract, widely used in the U.S., the owner supplies all site data, and the contractor is generally allowed to rely on it. If what's actually underground turns out to be radically different, the contractor might get an adjustment. So the system generally protects the contractor, unless there are big disclaimers or the contractor skipped obvious checks. Now, hop across the pond to the UK's NEC4 ECC. Here, risk is more collaborative. Both sides keep a risk register and flag potential issues early with an early warning process. The whole focus is on teamwork. Spot risks, talk them out, solve them fast, rather than just pinning blame. But then there's the FIDIC Yellow Book. And here's where things get strict. The contractor must do the heavy lifting. Evaluate, interpret, and verify every detail about site conditions. Relief is only available if the conditions were truly unforeseeable, and you can show you did everything a prudent contractor should. This fits the design-build model. If you want more control, you've got to accept more risk. Bottom line, FIDIC puts the sharpest edge on contractor responsibility. If you're working under FIDIC, site risk is yours, unless you've got ironclad proof that the surprise was absolutely unforeseeable and you acted with top-tier diligence. In the world of construction contracts, FIDIC is the toughest referee when it comes to site risk. Here's where projects can stumble and how to sidestep disaster. One of the biggest pitfalls? Assuming the site matches exactly what you see in the tender documents or those shiny geotechnical reports. It's easy to over-rely on borehole logs or environmental summaries, forgetting they might be outdated, incomplete, or just plain limited. Another classic mistake: ignoring gaps in the data, skipping cross-checks, or failing to raise red flags and clarify with the employer when something doesn't add up. So, what's the fix? Start with pre-bid diligence. Don't just trust the docs. Bring in local experts. Tap into drone mapping. Dig through historical records. Before you submit your bid, include clear disclaimers about the site conditions you're assuming, like stating dry excavation or undisturbed fill. This isn't just paperwork. It's protection. When you spot missing or unclear info, get formal, submit RFIs, and keep a detailed log of every clarification, question, and assumption you make. Remember, site data is a clue, not a guarantee. The more evidence you gather, and the better you document it, the stronger your case will be if you ever need to prove a surprise was truly unforeseeable. Treat every site report like a mystery waiting to be solved, and build your defense as you go. Let's talk about clarity and how a few fuzzy words can open the door to big disputes. Phrases like practicable or deemed to have obtained might sound straightforward, but in reality, they're wide open to interpretation. How much investigation is really enough? What does practicable actually mean in the heat of a construction claim? These gray zones are where arguments and costly lawsuits are born, especially when there's not enough documentation to back up either side. So, how do we make this better? Start by making every obligation as clear as possible. Define important terms in your contract. Spell out what practicable means for your project. Maybe it's what a prudent contractor could do in 2 weeks for no more than 0.5% of the contract sum. Suddenly, everyone knows the standard. Next, build a site data checklist. List every piece of employer-supplied data, log when it was reviewed, and have both sides note any exceptions or concerns. Get both parties to sign off, so there's no doubt about what was known and when. Finally, require joint site visit reports. Before the contract is even awarded, get both sides out to the site together, document what you see, and co-sign a record of observations, discrepancies, or constraints. This simple step goes a long way to aligning expectations and preventing headaches later. The more you define, document, and agree up front, the less you'll be arguing about what's practicable when the pressure's on. Clear rules today mean fewer disputes tomorrow. If you're looking for sample letters connected to this clause, you're in luck. Just head over to our exclusive website using the link in the description. There, you'll find ready-to-use templates for everything from discovery notifications and proposals for commencement to extension of time notices and claim particulars. We've also included sample letters for reporting site data discrepancies, raising concerns, or starting negotiations, plus comprehensive Clause 4.10 site data checklists to help you manage execution, deployment, and supervision. Make sure you check it out. The right letter can make all the difference when you need your documentation to speak for itself. So here's the bottom line. Clause 4.10 puts the spotlight on you, the contractor, to be proactive, inquisitive, and thoroughly prepared before you ever break ground. In today's contracts, doing your homework isn't just smart business. It's the only way to protect your interests and keep your project on track. Want to steer clear of surprises, disputes, and costly mistakes? Dig deeper, document everything, and never be afraid to ask the hard questions. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and check out more resources from Growth Mindset Company. Ready to take control of site risks on your next project? Stay tuned for more insights that put you ahead of the game.